So I was on the Loading Icon subreddit, and I see this post, which I think looks super cool, created by this dude, so full credits, and I thought, let's recreate this procedurally using geometry nodes, but taking it a step further, making it so that it can be done with any mesh. So here you can see I've done it with Suzanne. You could do it with any object, and this kind of looks like this is me when I'm at the supermarket and I see the dark chocolate, you know? Either way, it's a super simple node setup, and again, credit to the dude or dudette who made it. So, in a fresh Blender scene, go to Geometry Nodes, delete the default cube, and add in a cube that isn't the default cube, and make this a GeoNodes object. What we're going to do is we're going to first of all make it for the icosphere, and then I'll show you how to generalize it for any mesh. So, with an icosphere, I'm going to subdivide it not once, but twice, so we have more geometry, and now we are ready to create this effect. Really what this is it's two things. It's an extrusion of the mesh, which is going to kind of have a wavy effect where it goes from like left to right or right to left, and it's the material that's making it look cool, where the center is glowing and all that. So first of all, extrusion. Obviously, we're going to use a extrude mesh node. Make sure this is set to individual. If it's not, we're not going to get individual faces coming out on their own. So, we want to take this extrusion amount and obviously make a function for that that makes it wavy, okay? To do that, I want it to be with respect to time, which, by the way, this gives a cool effect where it just kind of explodes over time, but whatever. I want this to be cyclic, so as time progresses, throw it through a sine, a cosine, whatever, a ping pong function, whatever you want. And you can see a couple issues here. First of all, it's kind of growing, and then it's kind of going inwards, and that's because sine goes from -1 to 1. Second of all, it's not progressing from left to right. Let's fix the first issue where it goes inside. So instead of going from -1 to 1, I'm going to remap this so that we're mapping -1 to 1 to 0 to 1. In other words, it's going to be bouncing between 0 and 1. In fact, I don't want it to be growing that much, so let's have it max out at 0.3. Okay? We could also make this a bit faster by multiplying time. So we say time elapse 3 times faster. Now we have this effect. And now to get this left to right gradient, what I want to do is, I think there's two ways to do this. You could either use a gradient texture, which is not the way that I would do it, but let's see if that works. It does. Maybe just use that. The other way that I would do it is I would do it explicitly with the position node. I would separate it by XYZ and say add the X component, which does the same thing. But I guess gradient node uses less nodes, and you have an option to set it to like quadratic and do something a bit fancier. But I'm going to set it to linear. Okay, so now we have this thing expanding from left to right, and it's doing the thing. Next, the material, which is kind of the part where it changes depending on the mesh you are using. So at the end of all this, it's not that many nodes. Actually, one more thing. After this, we could add a bevel, just to add some detail. So something like that, because I think the original had a bevel. Okay. Beyond that, though, now the material. So it's not that many nodes. We're going to set material to be a material. And let me show you the way I would approach making this kind of glowing in the middle material, but not on the outside. And this is going to change, again, for a Suzanne or for a different mesh. So with the material, what I want is I want to somehow isolate the core of the icosphere and say, make that glow, make everything else not glow. The way I do this is I take the position socket, which tells me the coordinates of every face, every point on the thing, right? And I want to take the length of that. In other words, tell me how far away from the center is this. And it's going to be a little hard to tell, but it's kind of a spherical gradient where it gets darker if it's in the middle. To make this more obvious, let's throw this through a map range node. Or what we could do is we could actually find the minimum and maximum. Let's do that. So I'm going to set this to greater than. And you can see as I increase and decrease this, we're getting kind of the bounds. So when this is set to something slightly above 1, it kind of captures the inside and the rest is the outside. which is good information to know. So we're going to map arrange this from, let's say, 1.1 to, I mean, I guess this kind of works, actually, the way that it's set up right here. From 1.1 to 1, send that to 0 to 1, and that's going to give us our gradient. And by the way, this is not going to work with an arbitrary mesh. The fact that an icosphere is basically a sphere, we're exploiting that. And I'll show you why it doesn't work later. But either way, we connect that to the emission strength. And let's go to cycle so we can actually see that glowing effect. Well, I guess we can't see it until we pick a glowing color. But you can see that kind of does it, and it's kind of leaking through here. So let's make it kind of a reddish or orangish and make it like 5 times stronger. Look at that. That looks nice. I'm also going to increase the brightness of our light so it doesn't look so gray. And we can also set the material color to a fuller white. There we go. And one final thing, I know I'm just going back and forth. I'm just going to make the environment a bit brighter and make it invisible so we can't see it. There we go. Okay, so that is the essence of the effect. Now, the question is, why can't I just swap in a mesh, right? So let's say I have a Suzanne, and I'm going to subdivide it. So I used a Control 1 to add a subdivision surface of level 1. Why can I not just swap this in, right? So I go to a object info node and say, this whole node network, instead of the icosphere, plug in a Suzanne. And we can do that. The issue is, and you can see, let me turn off the bevel for a second so it goes a bit faster. You can see it's doing the effect, for sure. But the issue with this is the material. You can see when it's fully contracted and it's not expanded yet, it's kind of glowing, but the ear isn't. And this is because, again, this is kind of like casting a sphere and looking at the length of it. So it's not really glowing correctly. And with an arbitrary mesh, it won't necessarily glow correctly. So what we want to do is basically, instead of this length function, make something much more general that is based on the mesh. Here's the answer to that. We want to use this top socket. What it does is it tells us what areas or what vertices are extruded and which ones aren't. What that means is in geometry nodes, I can give this a name, call it our gradient. What this means is, by the way, I'm sorry, I know my voice is getting more and more nasally as I continue. It's the allergies, but hopefully it will rain soon and it will all wash out. But we take this attribute, we type in gradient so that the names are matching, and you can see this gives us a black and white gradient depending on how far this is extruded. So the very tips of these are going to be white, and the very bases of these are going to be black. So we plug this in here. We also want to invert it so that it gives us the opposite, which is actually kind of easier to see. And this will give us a general effect that works. And we can also, just like before, make it like 5 times stronger. So multiply it by 5. So this is a more general effect that works with any mesh, any extrusion, whatever. So if I set this to, let's test it. If I set it to, what mesh primitives do we have? Geometry, mesh primitives. We have a, let's try a cylinder. No, that's boring. Let's try a cone. And again, you can use any mesh you want. Well, this is kind of a weird result, but it definitely does it. Let me add more side segments. Well, you can see it works. So there you go. I'm happy with that. And with that, I don't know why I'm going to like not save it. With that, let's end the tutorial. How long did we go for? We went for 9.5 minutes. Okay. Either way, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. And as always, I like to end this tutorial by pimping the ever-living Back to Human chocolate bar. It's very good. Out of my Patreon. It's a vegan chocolate bar. and it somehow tastes great. Patreon, if you're interested, there's a link in the description. Here's what you get when you become a Patreon patron, other than supporting this and the CG Matter Default Cube channel, all that. It's the best way to do it. I am very thankful for the 800 people that have done that. But you get three things in return. One, you get to watch tutorials early, so you could have seen this video a day or 2 days or even a week early in some cases. That's just for $1, early access forever. Two, you get blend files, so you can get access to this general geometry nodes thing, again, inspired by that guy on Reddit. But more importantly, you get access to every blend and every project file I've uploaded since 2019. So you get access to hundreds of project files just for $5. And then finally, at the highest tier, we have exclusive tutorials. I make those every once in a while, usually once a month or so. You get access to the whole catalog. I've posted a bunch of them at this point, and you could go binge watch those. In general, thank you for everybody for watching till the end of this and watching my promo. Patreon is the best way to support this channel. The other best way is to subscribe and like and all that. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.